The rain poured down, drumming against the sleek car as it rolled through the quiet streets. Inside, Adam gripped the steering wheel loosely, his eyes fixed ahead but his mind far away. The city lights reflected off the rain-slick pavement, turning the world outside his window into a blur of gold and gray. His thoughts felt heavier than the storm, weighed down by a loneliness he couldn't seem to escape. His mansion, the expensive dinners, the constant flow of business meetings, they all felt meaningless. They were distractions, nothing more. The memory of his parents, gone in an instant, lingered like a shadow that never faded. The car slowed as his headlights caught movement on the sidewalk. A figure hunched against the rain, clutching a plastic bag. Her clothes were soaked through, her steps uneven. Adam frowned, squinting through the windshield. An older woman, her face etched with lines of hardship, was trudging through the downpour. He hesitated, the warmth of his car contrasting sharply with the icy rain outside. Then, almost without thinking, he rolled down the window. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he called out, his voice louder than usual to cut through the rain. The woman stopped, her shoulders stiffening. She turned slowly, her face wary. For a moment, she said nothing, her eyes scanning him as though searching for a trap. Then, with a small shake of her head, she began to walk again. Adam frowned. He pulled the car closer to the curb, leaning out a bit. "Please, let me help you. You'll catch your death out here." The woman stopped again. This time, she turned fully to face him, her grip on the bag tightening. "I don't want trouble," she said, her voice rough. "No trouble," Adam assured her quickly. "Just a ride. Somewhere warm, dry." He hesitated, then added softly, "I promise." The rain dripped from her hair, soaking the scarf barely clinging to her shoulders. She looked at the sky, the rain showing no sign of mercy, then back at him. Her fingers flexed around the bag. Finally, with a small nod, she stepped toward the car. Inside, the heater hummed as the woman sat stiffly, her bag on her lap. She kept her eyes down, water pooling at her feet. Adam drove in silence, glancing at her occasionally. He wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. At the mansion, the contrast was jarring. Warm lights spilled onto the driveway as Adam held the door open for her. She hesitated on the threshold, her eyes scanning the grand space like she didn't belong. "You're safe here," Adam said, his voice gentle. "Let me get you something warm to drink." She nodded slowly, stepping inside. Her name was Nora, she revealed after he pressed gently, though her answers came sparingly. She clutched her drink like it was a lifeline, her gaze distant as she sat in the plush chair. Bit by bit, her story trickled out, a life of dreams turned to survival, the streets becoming her home after leaving behind a past too painful to face. Adam listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer pity. Instead, he saw pieces of himself in her words. Loss, pain, the search for meaning. When she finished, silence hung in the air. Then Adam stood. "You can stay here," he said simply. "As long as you need." She blinked, surprised. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." Adam cut her off. "Let me help. Please." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Days turned into a week, then more. Nora's presence shifted the mansion's atmosphere. Adam found himself coming home earlier, drawn to the quiet companionship she brought. Over cups of tea, they talked, not just about her past, but about life, memories, and what it meant to move forward. One rainy afternoon, Adam returned home early to the sound of a soft melody. It floated through the hallway, drawing him like a magnet. He followed it to the guest room, stopping at the door. Nora sat by the window, her voice weaving a song that felt both sorrowful and beautiful. The rain outside blurred the view, but inside, the song seemed to fill the room with light. Adam stood frozen, his chest tightening at the sound. When she noticed him, her song broke off abruptly. "I didn't know you were back," she said, her cheeks flushing. "That was beautiful," Adam said, his voice quiet but full of awe. "Why didn't you ever tell me you could sing like that?" Nora's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "It's part of a life I left behind." She looked away, her hands folding in her lap. Adam moved closer, lowering himself into a chair. His eyes met hers, silently urging her to continue. After a long pause, she began again, her voice soft but steady. She looked away, her hands folding in her lap. Adam moved closer, lowering himself into a chair. His eyes met hers, silently urging her to continue. After a long pause, she began again, her voice soft but steady. "I thought I could trust him," she said, her gaze fixed on a spot on the floor. "Ben was charming, persuasive, and he made me feel seen. When we first met, he had this way of making me believe I was unstoppable. I didn't just fall for him. I trusted him with everything. My career, my life." Her voice caught, but she pushed on. "He handled all the money, the contracts. I never questioned anything. I just sang and let him take care of the rest. I thought that's how love worked. You give everything, and they take care of you." Adam shifted slightly in his chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, but he didn't interrupt. "But it wasn't love," Nora continued, her tone sharper now. "Not for him. I was just convenient. A ticket to a lifestyle he didn't want to work for. By the time I realized what he was doing, his drinking, the lies, the money disappearing, it was too late. I was in too deep, and he knew it. He knew I wouldn't leave because I was too scared of losing everything." Her hands twisted together in her lap, her fingers pale from the pressure. And then, one day, he was just gone. No explanation, no apology. Just an empty apartment and a mountain of debt. She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "I went from standing ovations to barely scraping by in what felt like minutes. It was humiliating." Adam's voice was low but steady. "You didn't deserve that, Nora." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Maybe not," she said quietly, "but it happened, and I've been running ever since." The room fell into silence. The faint sound of rain against the window filled the air. Adam leaned back, his eyes never leaving her. "You've spent so much time running," he said finally. "Maybe it's time to stop." Nora looked at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "And do what? Pretend it didn't happen? Start over like it's easy?" "No," Adam said firmly. "Not pretend, not forget, but face it. You've carried this alone for too long, Nora. Let someone help you for a change." She opened her mouth to protest but stopped, her shoulders sagging. "And Ben? What if seeing him just makes it worse?" Adam's expression softened. "It might," he admitted, "but it might also help you let go. He took so much from you, Nora. Maybe confronting him is the first step to taking some of it back." The air in the room was heavy. Adam stood still for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging between them. His eyes were fixed on Ben, who sat slumped in his wheelchair, his shoulders hunched as if carrying the world on his back. The silence stretched on, broken only by the soft hum of the room. Ben's voice had barely been a whisper, his words thick with regret. Adam's heart ached as he watched the man who had once been so powerful, now so frail and broken. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of man Ben had been before everything fell apart. He had been a manager, a man in charge of everything. Now, he was a shell of that person, consumed by guilt and the weight of his choices. Adam took a deep breath, his eyes softening. He wasn't here to judge, not yet. He wanted answers, but more than that, he wanted something for Nora. She needed peace. And maybe, just maybe, this was where it would begin. Adam broke the silence. "Ben, if I bring Nora to you, will you be ready to face her?" he asked, his voice steady but unsure. Ben's tired eyes met his. For a moment, there was nothing but pain in them. Then, a spark, small, but enough to stir something in Adam's chest. Ben nodded slowly, his voice thick as he spoke. "I'd do anything, anything to make it right." Adam turned away, but before he could leave, Ben's voice called out, Tell her I never stopped loving her." With that, Adam left the room, the door clicking softly behind him. His mind was already working, already planning. He knew Nora was not ready for what was to come, but it didn't matter. He had made a promise. The next day, he stood in front of Nora. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes a little tired, a little distant. The crack in her wall from yesterday was still there, but fragile, as if it might close up at any moment. Adam knew it wouldn't be easy, but he had to start somewhere. He looked at her, his voice steady. Nora, I've been to see Ben. Her eyes flicked up at him, sharp, but there was no anger there, just a quiet curiosity. And, she asked, he wants to talk to you, Adam said, his voice gentle. He wants to explain, to ask for your forgiveness. Her expression changed, but she said nothing. She just stared at him, as if considering his words carefully. The air felt thick between them, but Adam held her gaze, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, hesitant. Why now? After everything? Because he regrets what he did, Adam said, his eyes soft. Because he's trying to make things right. She blinked, her fingers tightening on the fabric of her sleeve. Her eyes searched his, as if looking for reassurance, as if she needed something to hold on to. And you think I'm ready for this? Adam nodded, his voice unwavering. I'm not sure anyone is ready for something like this, but you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to have a chance to decide for yourself. There was a long pause, the silence growing heavier. Finally, she nodded, barely above a whisper. Okay, but you'll come with me? Every step of the way, Adam promised. A small shift in the room, a quiet change that was almost imperceptible. Adam saw it in her eyes. Something had cracked, just a little, enough to let in a sliver of hope. It wasn't hope exactly, but it was something more. A possibility. Adam's heart beat a little faster, but he didn't let it show. This was it. The moment when everything might begin to change. Adam and Nora walked in silence down the path leading to the retirement home. The crisp air did little to ease the tension between them. As they approached the building, Nora's gaze shifted from the surroundings to Adam. She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, sensing something was amiss. What are we doing here, Adam? Nora asked, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings, brows furrowing in confusion. Adam took a breath, glancing around before answering. There's someone who needs to see you, Nora. Someone from your past. Nora's footsteps slowed, her heart thudding louder in her chest. Who? Adam? Who is here? Without answering, Adam led her toward a long corridor, his hand lightly resting on her back to guide her. They walked in step, Nora's eyes darting to the doors lining the hallway. A soft click of a door opening ahead caught her attention. Ben sat by the window, his face shadowed by time and regret. When he turned, the faintest gasp escaped his lips. His hand shook as he stood, his eyes fixed on Nora. Nora, he whispered, his voice a rasp that barely carried. Nora stopped at the threshold, her eyes wide, her lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, she remained frozen, studying him, the man she once knew, and yet now barely recognized. Ben took a tentative step forward, his face crumpling. I'm sorry, Nora, he choked out, his voice trembling. For everything. For all the nights I made you cry. I destroyed everything. Nora's face twitched, her breath shallow. Her hands clutched the sides of her coat as if holding herself together. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes closed for a second, blinking away the sudden rush of emotion. I ran because I couldn't live with the man you had become, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She stepped back slightly, her gaze on the floor. I loved you, but I needed to save myself. Ben's face sagged, a deep sigh escaping his chest. He lowered his gaze, nodding slowly. His hand reached out, trembling, stopping just shy of Nora's. His fingers curled into a fist before relaxing. He swallowed and stared at the floor. I lost you long before you left, didn't I? His voice broke as his eyes filled with tears. Adam stood a few steps back, his eyes soft but unwavering as he observed them. The silence stretched between Nora and Ben. Ben's fingers twitched, longing but uncertain. He held his hand out again, and after a moment, Nora extended hers slowly, brushing his fingers before clasping his hand, a gentle but significant touch. I don't know if I can forgive you for everything, Nora said, her voice stronger this time, though her hands shook slightly. But I can't keep holding on to this pain. Maybe forgiveness is the first step. Ben's hand trembled more noticeably now, his grip tightening. I never deserved your forgiveness. But I'm grateful that you're here, he whispered, his head lowering. I loved you. I still do. Their eyes met briefly, before both looked away. The quiet lingered, and Adam's gaze shifted, seeing a flicker of understanding between them, a connection, a chance at healing. Ben's voice broke through again. I would like to see her, Nora. Clara, he said, his voice quiet but urgent. I need to ask for her forgiveness too. I wasn't the father she deserved. Nora's eyes softened at the mention of Clara. Her jaw clenched as she thought about the daughter they had lost. She nodded slowly, her expression turning from pain to determination. We'll find her, Ben. Maybe we can start over, just a little. Adam stayed in the background, watching the exchange with a quiet satisfaction. As they continued talking, he noticed a spark of hope in both their eyes. Later, as the sun rose higher, Adam and Nora sat on the mansion's porch, cups of coffee steaming between them. Adam's gaze was fixed on her, thoughtful. He leaned forward slightly, watching as she stirred her drink. Have you thought about singing again, Nora? Adam asked gently. There's a music festival in a few weeks. I think it would be the perfect opportunity for you to return to the stage. Nora's lips curled slightly, her gaze distant. She shook her head, the weight of her past clearly on her mind. Those days are behind me, Adam. I'm not the person I was. But Adam didn't relent. You have something special, Nora. I know it. People still remember you. Your voice, your energy. They need to hear your story. Nora looked at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She stared into her cup, swirling it slowly. After a few moments, she met Adam's eyes again, the slightest nod of agreement. I'm doing this for me, Nora finally said, a hint of resolve creeping into her voice. To prove to myself I can still do it. Adam smiled, his relief almost imperceptible. Meanwhile, in the quiet of his office, Adam worked late into the night, the soft glow of his desk lamp illuminating his face as he searched through documents. A private investigator's report sat open on his desk. Clara was abroad, a visual artist, her work brimming with the complexity of loss and introspection. Adam's finger traced the information, a plan forming in his mind. This reunion, the festival, everything was falling into place. The family, the hope, the future. It all depended on what happened next. It was a crisp morning when Adam decided to take the first step to bring Nora, Ben, and Clara together. His heart was in the right place. He truly wanted to help them heal. He knew he had to reach out to Clara, even though it wouldn't be easy. After all, she was 31 now, and still carried so much pain from her past. Her father, Ben, was someone she couldn't bear to think about. Adam picked up his phone and dialed Clara's number. The video call rang a few times before she answered. Her face looked tired, but her eyes sharpened when she saw Adam. I know this is difficult for you, Adam began, seeing the confusion in her eyes. But I need you to hear me out. Nora and Ben have been trying to make things right. They've worked hard to forgive each other. Clara didn't respond at first, her gaze distant. And why would I care about them now? After everything, she finally asked, her voice tinged with hurt. Adam took a deep breath. Because your mother, Nora, is going to perform at the music festival. She hasn't sung in years. And I think this is the perfect moment for you all to see each other again. She would love to have you there, just to watch. Even if it's too much, just come. Clara hesitated, her emotions swirling. She thought of her mother, how she used to sing around the house. The memory of those days, before everything fell apart, made her throat tighten. I don't know if I can forgive my father, Adam, but my mother. I miss her, Clara whispered, her voice breaking. Adam nodded. I understand, but maybe coming to the festival will help. You can see her shine again. Clara looked down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Finally, she whispered, Okay, I'll come. I need to see her sing. Adam's relief was palpable. Thank you, Clara. I'll keep it a surprise. It will mean a lot to her. The days leading up to the festival were filled with anticipation. Clara's visit remained a secret, and Adam could hardly wait for the moment he had been working toward. Nora, too, was preparing for the festival with the same passion she had when she was young. She worked tirelessly on her set list, and the nerves in her stomach grew each day. This performance wasn't just about singing. It was about reclaiming a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. The festival day arrived, and the city buzzed with excitement. Adam was backstage, overseeing everything. He glanced at Nora, who was adjusting her dress in front of the mirror. Her face glowed, not just from the stage lights, but from something deeper. "You look amazing," Adam said, his voice warm and reassuring. Nora turned to him, her eyes wide. "I don't know how to thank you for all of this, Adam. I never thought I'd perform again. Thank you for believing in me." Adam smiled, squeezing her hand. "This is your moment, Nora. Let them see the star you've always been." The crowd outside was buzzing with excitement as Nora took the stage. The announcer called her name, and the applause was deafening. She walked out, her steps sure, the spotlight casting a golden glow around her. She lifted the microphone, paused for a moment to soak in the energy of the crowd, and then began to sing. Her voice was powerful and filled with emotion, and every note seemed to resonate with the audience. It was as if the years had melted away, and Nora was the same woman who had once commanded the stage with ease. The crowd was moved. Some clapped, others wiped away tears. Adam watched from backstage, his heart swelling with pride for Nora. As the final song approached, the air was thick with anticipation. But just as the music started to swell, something unexpected happened. The lights on stage shifted, and a new figure appeared. Clara. She slowly walked toward her mother, microphone in hand, her eyes filled with tears. Nora stopped singing, her mouth falling open in surprise. The audience began to murmur, but soon they realized who this was. "Clara?" Nora whispered, the tears flowing freely now. Clara smiled softly, and they joined together to sing the final song, the one Nora used to sing to Clara when she was a child. The audience stood, clapping loudly, overcome with emotion. For those who were there, it was a moment they would never forget. Their voices intertwined perfectly, and for the first time in years, it felt as if the years of separation had vanished. It was as if time had been kind to them, erasing all the pain and bringing them back together. When the song ended, Nora embraced Clara tightly, both of them crying. Adam watched from backstage, his heart full of happiness. Even Ben, in the audience, wiped away a tear, grateful to see his family beginning to heal. Clara took the microphone again, her voice shaking but strong. "I came back to see my mom shine again," she said, her eyes locking with Nora's. "And it was all thanks to Adam, who brought me back to where I belong." The crowd erupted into applause, and Adam blushed, feeling both proud and humble. This wasn't about him. It was about the healing he had helped facilitate. After the performance, the three of them gathered backstage. Ben, unable to hold back his emotions, turned to Clara. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I failed you, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you." Clara looked at him. Her expression softened, but there was a seriousness in her eyes. "I know, Dad, and I forgive you. It's not going to be easy, but I want to try again. I want us to be a family." Nora squeezed both of their hands, her voice steady. "We're all imperfect, but we're here together. That's what matters." Clara, inspired by her mother and Adam's efforts, finally spoke her truth. "I'm going to move back here. It's time for a fresh start." Together, the three of them embraced, knowing that this was the beginning of a new chapter. Adam stood quietly at a distance, his heart swelling. He had helped bring them back together, and it was more fulfilling than anything else in his life. As Adam left the festival that night, he realized that his journey of helping others had only just begun. He had found a purpose, one that was deeper than wealth or recognition, a purpose that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Each act of kindness, he now knew, could change lives, and this was just the beginning. Did you enjoy the story? If it moved you or reminded you of the beauty of forgiveness and family, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heartwarming and inspiring stories. Let's keep sharing hope and the power of storytelling. See you in the next one.